Okay.
Harm, Ketum, Egg. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are, and for some reason still have the boredom to watch this show. Welcome once again to Freedom Alternative Interviews. I'm here with Andrei Murgescu.
Good evening.
Of the Constitution Project, right?
The one-man show.
The one-man show
Project.
of the Constitution Project. Yeah, we'll speak about the Constitution
Yes.
Project. It should be noted for our friends in Romania that we're taping this on May the 14th, but everyone will be seeing it probably a week from now. May the 14th will become a historical day in a way, being the last day of the state of dementia, otherwise known as emergency.
Yes, yes. Emergency for some, not for everyone.
Not for everyone, yeah. I know
Yes.
many of you all are quarantined, we are not. So there's that. Talk to me about the Constitution Project first.
Well, to begin with, I always, since I've been, starting to basically look around myself and see that some things were kind of wrong. I tried, asking some questions, trying to find out what is wrong, why things are the way they are. Because, as you know, we've been kind of basically dealing with a lot of stuff since the coup d'etat or revolution, whatever you want to call it, in '89. So basically, what happens? We always had options, occasions to witness things going wrong in here, and obviously, at some point, you either just go with the flow, as many people do, not only here but pretty much everywhere, or you start asking yourself questions. And if you don't get tired of asking yourself questions, which happens a lot, it happens to me as well, because there are situations where I'm just, to hell with everything, I'm just gonna mind my own business, which is basically the liberal thing to do. So anyway, I just started finding my way around, reading a lot of stuff. I come from a family that's been always on the liberal side. The truly liberal side, like the classical liberal side and conservative side. And I've always been kind of inoculated against any kind of, authoritarian ideas and regimes and whatever. But I was kind of stumbling around. I wasn't pretty sure what I was looking for. I haven't read that much. So about 10 years ago, I kind of started digging in, and since I happen to be a very, 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 very fond to the United States and the American ideal, I just kind of started there, because I did what any free person would do: just look at their neighbors and see who does it right and see who does it wrong. And from my perspective, for most of the time, the Americans got it right to very right. Their issues notwithstanding. They're not perfect by any means, but
Well, of course, perfect doesn't exist. So
perfect doesn't exist in this world anyway. So, and then, like I said, I just started kind of using that passion for the United States and started studying the history of the United States, and then kind of, in a sort of way, backtrack my way to the roots of liberty and what liberty means and what
and how to
free will means, and
institutionalize it.
and how to institutionalize it exactly, and how institutions work, so on and so forth. So that resulted in me at some point arriving to the American Constitution, and at that point, as I read it, and as I also read the Federalist Papers and other books as well, and also kept talking to people, and went on, following the Heritage Foundation and the Hoover Institution, and things kind of started to fall into place. Where there is always that situation where you kind of feel how things should be, but you need someone who's more cultured than you or more or smarter than you to kind of just point you in the right direction. And from this perspective,
or at the very least have the exercise of doing things.
Yes,
in that way.
yes. So from that perspective, I think the Hoover Institution, the Heritage Foundation, and I think they're doing an incredibly great job at educating people and at trying to keep a civil, fruitful way of debating. So anyway, so at that point, at some point, I realized that this is our main issue in Romania, and probably the main issue in other countries as well, and even in the States, as the Constitution has been either amended sometimes in a bad way, or outright just bypassed by regulations and all that kind of stuff. So I realized that because here we just always kept patching stuff. Okay, we never kind of had maybe we had one historical occasion when we kind of started from scratch during the reign of Carol the First. Mm-hmm. But then that occasion, and that was kind of a unique occasion. But other than that, I realized that if we just keep patching the same bad construction, you end up at best with something similar to that neighborhood that now they turned down in Hong Kong, the Kowloon Walled City. There's where that was, but at least that one was kind of functional and people were kind of free. Okay, maybe they're poor, but they were free. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you at some point you have to find a way of resetting things, and resets basically come in two ways. One is a revolution, which I'm not a fan of, okay, because usually revolutions are, I think, more characteristic to people who are kind of want changes fast, and I do realize that changes do not come fast, especially when it comes to human nature and how the way we govern ourselves, so on and so forth. That said, we need a reset. Okay, now that reset may be precipitated by some acts of government that maybe the government will overstep their bounds even more, and people will at some point get angry, and maybe there is even chance of some violent upheaval at some point, either here or in other countries. Again, as we discussed previously, this is not something I would like to see. I know that it might very well happen, and that it usually does happen. So anyway, coming back to this, I realized that at some point there is going to be talk about resetting the way we govern ourselves and basically reset the Constitution. And during these years, I talked to different people, more even people that are constitutionalists, that they should kind of. I think they're definitely way more adept than myself at reading a constitution, writing a constitution, so on and so forth. But I kept talking to them, and I kept waiting for someone else to publicly come out and say, look, we have to start having a discussion about reforming the Constitution. And nobody came. Yeah. Okay. So I kind of toyed with this idea, and I said, I always kind of suffered, and I still do suffer this like imposter syndrome, where I'm saying, okay, who am I to just open up the discussion? And in the end, I just said, okay, nobody does it, so somebody has to. Okay, whether I do it right or do it wrong. If I do it wrong, then someone else can come along and correct me, or they can do their own version of this initiative or whatever. So
start the competition.
Yes, and it's because this is one of the things that a good constitution should encourage. The free market of ideas, where okay, if you think that you can come up with a better constitution or a better proposal, please do it. I totally encourage anyone to do it. Anyone to just come with any ideas, good or bad or harebrained or whatever. Just let's start having a conversation. So anyway, after years of just procrastination and just kicking
the can down the road.
Yeah, I just said, okay, I'm going to just start doing this myself. And I basically started using the American Constitution as a model, and in parallel look at several other constitutions that I believe are right. And why I believe are right, because I see the results of their works in those respective countries. I mean, again, we're not talking perfect. We're just talking the best there is. Okay, So right now I'm looking at the besides the American Constitution and obviously the three remaining constitutions, the one in 1866, the one in 1923, and 2003. I'm also looking at the Swiss Constitution, the Constitution of Republic of South Korea, the Constitution of Japan, the Constitution of France, the Czech Republic, and I think it's just maybe another two as well. So what I'm doing right now by myself, although I did invite people to join me, and I hope that people will join me, because again, otherwise this is going to be a fool's errand, because there is no way in hell I'm going to pull this by myself. I mean, this is, the reason I decided to start it by myself was exactly this. Look, I'm going to set an example, I'm going to put myself out there, and maybe people are going to say, okay, let's not let that guy...
If they say you're insane and start up a competition, you win. If they join you, you still win. So,
yes.
Yeah.
So it's still, there's always that probability or possibility where they just laugh at me. They don't start. They don't join me. They don't start anything either, and then I get bored and frustrated at some point. I just leave it be. But anyway, the first thing I want to achieve with this is just put the idea out there. Just, guys, we need to sit down and have a conversation about the fundamental law of this country. Because as long as we don't have that, as long as we keep patching and adding, writing bad laws because the fundamental law is bad, and then trying to correct the good laws, and then the power changes, and then they break whatever legal you might have repaired in the previous administration. This is just, it's literally a fool's errand, and if we look at the legislative landscape in Romania, and not only, we only see it grow and become more entangled. So except for now Trump's initiative to kind of start and cut the red tape and kind of,
much to anyone's surprise, he actually did it.
Yes, even to my surprise. Okay. So besides that, obviously I don't know what's happening in all the legislatures or all the administrations on earth. Maybe
the Republic of Georgia pulled off something like that during the administration of Saakashvili, but other than that, in the last 20 years, not much.
Yeah. So again, I'm seeing this as, because I have people who tell me, look, maybe you're exaggerating. Maybe look around you. Things are going well.
Do they?
Yes, let's say they do. Let's say they're, coming from living up until 10 years under a dictatorship, I still know that we can have it way worse than this. And that's why on one hand, I'm thankful for what I got now, but I'm painfully aware that none of this is guaranteed. And at the same time, blissfully aware that
better is possible.
Yes, yes, that's the thing. And this is what drives me most, that we can do better. And by we, I mean not we as a collective, but we as a community of individuals. We can do better. And I'll probably bring this again in our discussion, and I brought it last time, how the best reaction during this, whatever you want to call it, but it was a crisis, whatever it was, whatever the reason.
Of panic.
Yes. The best reaction, was that of the private enterprise. Private individuals, private enterprise. They even here, I wasn't expecting them to react that fast and that efficient, and yet they did. And again, I do think that the solution to our crisis, and not only to the Romanian crisis, to the crisis that's probably going to follow in the United States as well, the solution, the reconstruction and stabilization lies in innovation, in the free market, and in basically just letting people do their thing. So if this is never ever going to be the merit of any government ever. So far, the governments, most of the stuff what they did, at best, they managed, in some countries, they managed not to get in the way to some extent. So this is the best what they achieved. Most of the time, they just managed to get in the way, scare the shit out of everyone, and basically not achieve anything of substance, I think. So that, coming back to what I was saying, I do think that it's necessary, and not only here. I think this a discussion, same discussion, and involving as many people as possible from the general population in a discussion about the Constitution and about the necessity of having a very simple, strong law, very well written. It's essential for all of us. I mean, us as Romanians, as us as individuals, and every other individual on earth. As long as countries will keep not having good constitutions, problems
any attempt of the rule of law will
yes
at some point go badly.
Yes.
You were mentioning earlier about the French Constitution, and right before I came here, I was reading a piece from, I think it was Le Figaro, where they were detailing what the Emmanuel Macron administration is trying to do, and they're essentially attempting again, like they attempted last year around this time, to impose a censorship regime a la Islamic Republic of Iran, except that instead of haram content, they will be looking at anyone who disagrees with the government about the commie cough, and anyone who disagrees about the government on what hatred means. So the thing is that if the Constitution of France would be so well written, the entire discussion would be impossible. So it's obvious that, and it's not just France, most of Europe has terrible constitutions. Well, except for the United Kingdom that doesn't have a constitution. So there's that. Because when you were saying that we keep on patching things, I was thinking, that's what the United Kingdom has been doing. They keep on patching things and they just keep on muddle through rather than have a plan about it. And the Germans usually do have a plan and always ends up badly, except for the commie cough. This time they got it right. But the thing is that it's not just a Romanian problem.
It's a universal problem.
Because if it were, I would not have come again here for a second talk in English. I would have just left our talk in Romanian. But it's not. It's not. I don't know if it's a world problem, but it's definitely a Europe problem.
It is a world problem.
The reaction to the commie cough shows that Europe is significantly behind the rest of the world. Because where did dissent come from? Well, okay, Sweden. But other than Sweden, it was Brazil. It was South Korea. Was bloody Tanzania had a better response than most of Europe. So I'm not sure about the world problem. It's definitely a problem of our backyard.
It's definitely a European problem, and
even in the United States, the federal government refused to enact things like martial law or any kind of totalitarian nonsense, and said, "No, look, the communities know better." And of course we saw a lot of difference between communities. The communities like New York and Los Angeles, they think they know better and they might screw themselves up economically.
Well, let them, I say.
Yes, absolutely.
Let them screw themselves. Because
absolutely.
I will just, when we probably discuss about this, I will remind you about the the Plymouth colony. Where they
the socialist experiment.
They did a socialist experiment, and they did it under private ownership, though.
They discovered capitalism.
And they discovered capitalism through starvation, and then basically they were set as an example. And this is
I think Thanksgiving Day tradition. It's thank God we discovered capitalism. That's literally what it is. Yes,
I mean. It's very important to, and this is, a shout out to federalism and to, regionalism and subsidiarity, where it's good to have things separated, because, and it's honest, because we might do mistakes. I might make an honest mistake, but then if I do a mistake and if I make a mistake and it blows in my face,
the consequences
you can see the consequences are mine to bear, and if the consequences are too terrible, I'm not affecting you, and that has two advantages. One, you can learn from my mistakes, and two, if I'm not contagious enough with my mistakes, you may actually find it in your heart to come to my aid. But if I were to, if my decisions were to influence you, if you are bound to my decisions, and you and 10 other people, if I made a bad decision, I would just drag you all with me, and then there would be no salvation. So going back to the case of California, if California makes a mistake, there's obviously going to be people suffering. There's going to be terrible consequences. Okay, but at the same time, I'm sure that one, people will learn their lesson. I would rather they don't learn it the hard way, but sometimes there is no other way except the hard way. So on one hand, they will learn their lesson, and I'm sure that if California or any other state in the United States, if they are in a bad way, I'm sure that the American spirit, the charitable American spirit and Anglo-Saxon spirit will come to their aid. Okay, and they'll say, yeah, you kind of messed up things there, but we are still here to help you. So that's why it's this is one of the chief, constitutional things where, separation, keep things separated. Okay, you wanna experiment with the law. Maybe it's the best law, humankind ever conceived. But please just do it in a confined environment. Let's see how it goes there, and let it lead by example. Yes, and with prudence, okay, let other people adopt it, because obviously, if I'm designing a round wheel, and people see that it's working, they're going to just do it themselves. There is no need for me to just come over to them and impose my round wheel. So people are not stupid. Or if they are, they get smarter. But there is no way for them to get smarter if there is, someone else always telling them what to do. So yeah, there is that. Right.
You mentioned subsidiarity earlier, and given the discussion of France, Romania, these are countries that don't have subsidiarity at all.
Yes.
And or Hungary, for that matter.
For us, I think that it might have some. So at
least not. I mean, obviously, during the Komikov crisis or panic crisis, to be more precise, they've had almost the same reaction as we did, as our government did, because we personally didn't, but our government did. And it was that lack of subsidiarity, that lack of trust within the local communities to make their best decisions for themselves. And we can still see it now. In France, they want to prolong this insanity even further.
Just note before we go deeper into France that I'm really not very good at either French history or French Constitution. I do know a few things. So you mentioned earlier something, and I wanted to touch on that just a little bit. You mentioned something about the Constitution of France not being that good. I wouldn't be so sure. Definitely, I mean. So far, from what I've read so far, I didn't read a lot of it yet, there are some issues with it, but there are some good things as well. The problem is, I think it might be, as in, the States, but maybe even less in the States, but the Constitution may be well written, okay? You may have, provisions against, censorship, but if the politicians find a way to circumvent that, then the Constitution is it's pointless,
it's the same argument that it doesn't matter how much of a perfect fundamental law you have if you don't have the people and the constitutionalists, I guess, to enforce it and observe it. It still becomes irrelevant. And
it's it's like it's like with
use it or lose it principle.
Yes, that's one thing. And then it's like I see this discussion coming up very often lately. With some sort of like more militant atheists, going to Christians and telling them, why do you comment on that? How dare you critique some poor guy or whatever, if you yourself are not perfect? Or they say, look, the Bible is not perfect because the Christians are not perfect. No. The Bible, it's well written. That's a well-written book. Okay, those are some very well-written rules. But I mean, humans are always going to find a way to circumvent the rules. Sometimes that is good, but sometimes it's bad, and that's why I'm saying maybe the French Constitution has some provisions that basically forbid on paper the censorship. But if politicians don't respect it, and then again, if you don't have a proper separation of powers, that's again a problem. This is going back to what Judge Scalia was saying, God rest his soul. You know that even the in Russia, basically they guaranteed freedom of speech, freedom of expression.
Yeah, the Constitution of the Soviet Union guaranteed freedom of speech. Yes,
and nobody gave a damn about it.
Of course.
Why? Because there was no separation of powers. There was no proper separation of powers, and I'm sure that even if there was a proper separation of powers on paper in their constitution, they could have still not give a damn about it. So if there is a rule and if there is a general consensus between politicians that they are not going to respect the rules, I mean, we just had this, what's her name? Alina Gorghiu, who just said today that basically, sometimes...
Yeah, the amendment we pushed is unconstitutional, but it's a trick you always use in politics or something like that.
Yes, she just like a, cursory,
glance.
Yeah, whatever. Gonna look at it. Yeah, we can. No, I mean, there is no principle in their mind as politician, and I think she's
she should be considered a top tier politician, given that she's
not only that, I think she's a law graduate as well.
I think so, yes.
Yeah, I mean, and to them, I mean, it should be ingrained in every politician's, it should be in their bones. Look, it's the Constitution, okay? Even if they do want to circumvent it, okay, they wouldn't go out saying stuff like that. So, I mean, they would just do it, behind the scenes or whatever. Right? But what she said just demonstrates that she doesn't really care and she doesn't really understand as a person the importance of the Constitution.
Yeah, Alina Gorghiu. That's all I'm gonna say. Yeah, the thing is that it's not just one of these politicians. It's not just Alina Gorghiu. It's not just the judges who or the investigators who I should say persecuted Michael Flynn, now that we know for sure that this is the case. It's not just the lawmakers in France who try to censor anyone who disagrees with the government on the Comey-Cough issue. It's not just the police officers who give you a fine because you tweeted something wrong thing about transgenders in the United Kingdom. It's not just these individual cases, these individual people. It's almost as if it's a consensus, either of a consensus of stupidity, or a malicious consensus. But either way, there is a consensus of just outright ignoring these things.
Yes.
And how did we get here? We as in Europe, really.
I think
how did we get here? Weren't we supposed to learn some things? Now, I know that...
yes, this is the same question I just asked two people in the last 3 weeks.
I know that Mr. Murphy says in his laws that people learn one thing and one thing only from history. The fact that people learn absolutely nothing from history.
Yes.
Yeah. So I know that, but in the intermarium or in Eastern Europe, we should have learned from 30 years ago a thing or two, and we did. We did learn some of them, but we didn't learn enough. And Western Europe should have learned too. By looking at us, should have learned. And they didn't either.
Yeah.
How did we get there?
Well, I was just asking myself this today because, there was this, like a month or two ago, the Russians and the Chinese sent help to Europe. And I just ranted because it was a rant on Facebook. It was like an outright rant. It's like, these guys are going to help. These are going to send like all their spies and whatever. But it was kind of like, I wasn't even sure. I would say, even in my mind, I was like, okay, maybe this time they're really going. Maybe they're doing just for political reasons or PR reasons. But maybe this time they're going to just at least send someone, try to help. Not actually send people to spy on Europe. Okay. And of course they did. And I was like, I couldn't believe I was right in a rant. I mean, these people, they insist on just confirming the cliche to the maximum. I mean, it's like, what's next? Do we see like the Arnold Schwarzenegger? I mean, there was that movie where Arnold Schwarzenegger was like a Russian policeman or whatever. And do we go to those stereotypes with like stereotypical Russians? Like they insist in confirming the stereotype, both the Chinese and the Russians. And I'm thinking, look, if I in a rant I just nailed it like dead on, spot on, okay. what we're doing, I mean, the secret services in Italy, in all Europe, okay? What were they doing? Yeah. The intelligence community. I mean, what does this say about us if we fall for these like cheap tricks? Okay, what does this say about us really? Because this is the state we're in. Okay, we're being played. By
fifth grade tricks.
Yes. I mean, look at the Chinese. Look, they've been, and to be fair, I was, for a time, I also had this idea. Look, if you're going to pat them on the head and just show them that if they act in a civilized way and in an open market, it's in their own good, and maybe they're going to go civilized. No, and just to be clear, I have nothing to say against the regular Chinese citizen. I think that most of them are victims.
But definitely the nomenclature of the
absolutely,
party, yes.
Absolutely. Okay. So, and I made that mistake as well, because the thing that I was thinking is like, look, at least they're not like the Russians. Okay. Because, and again, when I say the Russians, I mean the Russian nomenclature and government and whatever. Okay. And I'm not saying like Ivan on the street or whatever, or Natasha. I have nothing against them, okay? But the Russian government and the Russia as a political entity is nihilistic, okay? Because if you sit with someone, if you want to get along with someone, if you want to negotiate with someone, okay, that someone has to respect you and not want to annihilate you. But sitting at a table,
and not want to annihilate himself either.
In the process, yes. Exactly. Okay, it's the same thing as sitting with Iranians or whatever. Look, I can negotiate with you because I have friends who told me, look, why do you approve of military interventions in Iran or whatever? And I'm saying because there is no way of negotiating with them. If that man wants, or whatever, if that government wants you dead, what purpose does it serve for you to just sit down and look, I'm gonna give you money and I'm gonna welcome you into my house and into my community? No, because they are nihilistic. That's the problem. And I hope that the Chinese were this way, but the government, it seems like the Chinese government is just as bunkers. Okay, and this goes back to the period of before in World War II and the Cold War, but even before that. Okay, even in Americas of the 20s and the 30s, where the communists had already started to penetrating. Okay, and there were multiple warnings. There was that guy, an American guy who actually went in Ukraine during the Holodomor.
Yes, and reported for the New York Times.
Yes, and there was I think George Kennan again. I think who warned all the administrations. Look, there is no way for you to negotiate with the Russians. They are going to try to trick you, and they're going to succeed. Okay, and this is where the same happened in the 90s. Okay, look, Russia. Let's welcome back Russia to the international community. I'd be more than happy to do that. Okay, I mean, I do have a lot of affection for Russia as a culture. Okay. And so there's that kind of love-hate relationship, if you want. But they have to get rid of that government, because as long as they're locked in that system, they're not going to get out of it, and they're going to drag anyone else around them. So anyway, coming back to your question, I think that the reason we are at this point is basically communist propaganda, which has worked for decades, if not 100 years, okay, and which started with the French Revolution, maybe even before that, okay. So, and all like Dostoevsky saw it. There's a lot of people just saw it coming and they warned against it. So we have no excuse. We knew very well what was going to hit us, and this is why maybe I may pass as maybe an extremist, or maybe exaggerating to some of my friends and people I know. But when I go to them and tell them, look, the government overreach is dangerous, and they say, nah, just you're paranoid. Am I really?
Yeah, but only the paranoid survives.
Yes, or I mean, there is that thing where there's quite a few anecdotes about. There's this thing which I'm not sure if it's apocryphal or not, about Philip K. Dick, who one day goes to his therapist and he says something to the effect of, "Look, I'm not sure if I'm paranoid or if someone is putting someone in my drinks to make me paranoid." Anyway, so this has been, like, I think, propaganda that has been around us for years, and thing is, I think that right now, I think the leftist propaganda in Europe and left in Europe is way, way, way more dangerous than Russia, for instance. Russia is dangerous because it has a lot of weapons.
And because it's Russia, we
know it, but yes. Is it going to use them? Maybe. If given the occasion, absolutely. Okay, because this is what they do as a government, again, as a political entity. Okay,
and it's what Russia has been doing since the 1700s. I mean,
yes.
It's not like...
I mean, we're kind of used to this. Okay, it's the
been
devil
our
we know.
Inconvenient neighbor for so long that
yes, we kind of, but
it's the devil we know.
It's the devil we know, exactly. But now, if you look at Europe still, in even France or Sweden, or they still have, there's like this, I'm gonna just give it a nickname, it's like a reserve of values, of civilization.
A reservoir.
Or reservoir, yes, that's a better term, and they're still tapping into that, okay? Even though you may have a Frenchman who declares himself socialist or leftist, he still has some values left over from, back when they were like more, kind of liberal and concerned about this, or even more in England, okay, or in other countries. They still have that. But that reservoir, unless it's replenished and transferred to the next generation and be basically kept, okay, and transferred, that reservoir is going to dry up at some point, okay? And I don't know, maybe 1 generation, 2 generations. Okay, so, and all that, work ethic and charitable spirit and orderly spirit, and all that will be gone if they don't hang onto it. And the clearest of experiments is here. Okay, it was enough for us to have 45 years of communism, and that set us back 200 years, basically, in terms of mentality. Okay, so the question is if they want the same. Okay, and they probably have to experiment that on their own skins, because otherwise we may as well just keep, running our mouths at them, and they're not going to listen. Or maybe a bit of a sliver of the population will listen, but most of it will not. So that's that. I'm not sure. The only thing I think we can do is just make sure we popularize our points of view, okay, and hope that people will catch on to them, that will transmit them, and that most of all they will preserve their values and they'll build on it. And because, again, I think we also discussed this in the past again, this is tradition. Tradition is a repository of experience, basically. Okay, maybe some traditions kept some, bad things as well. But overall, that's all that what tradition is.
It's the cumulative experience of the previous generations.
Why throw all that? Why throw all that away? Why do you think?
The reason it survived is because it's probably not entirely wrong.
Yes. What makes anyone think today that they're smarter than their counterpart 200 or 300 years ago? Because I kind of made a funny test of my own, and if I meet someone who thinks they're smart, I'm telling them, look, imagine that I'm just putting you in a time machine and sending you back 300 years into the past. Do you have anything of value to tell those guys? Can you survive in that? Because if you're an engineer, you might show them how to, I don't know, build a better bridge or build a steam engine or whatever. Okay? If you're a doctor, if you're a geographer even. But what would you do if you are
Gender studies graduate.
not even that? Let's go to a let's go to my job. I'm a video editor. I'm a video and I do animation, okay? What am I going to do with that? Really? Send me back into the 1700s, okay? So there were like better artists that we're kind of referencing right now into today's art. So what am I going to tell? I would probably just end up, shoveling shit in some, or I don't know, doing some menial work. So, and then you hear people say, yeah, people are kind of backwards back then. Are you really sure about that? Because, so...
Speaking about tradition, there's a little story, I don't think I've got the chance to tell it to you, and because definitely I didn't say it on this channel, because, well, up until today when we're filming, it's still technically not entirely legal to tell it, but by the time I'm publishing it, it's
really? Okay.
During the so-called state of emergency, when a lot of people pretended to be afraid of the commie cough, I was one of the people who didn't care. And initially I got my paper as a humanitarian worker purely for personal purposes, so I can avoid the law. But at some point I was like, why not use it for its designed purpose too? Maybe I learn a thing or two. And as a result, I offered myself volunteer to go and treat suspected commie cough cases in remote rural areas. And I did, because I served a little bit in the military. I have a very marginal medical training. I'm like, I can treat a cold. I really can. It's not complicated.
Yeah.
And the hospital allotted to me a lot of suspected cases of very old people. And I was like, well, it's getting warm outside. Let's get them outside. The reason I said that is because ever since the 1690s, when it was a very harsh flu in England, an English doctor documented that if you take people outside to meet the sun, any respiratory infection tends to
subside.
Yes. And then the same thing got documented again in 1720s, again in 1840s. Even Romanian authors in 1830s were talking about that. The Spanish flu also noted that the people who were treated in military hospitals outside had a 3 times lower death rate than those treated in regular hospitals inside. And also, my great-grandma, who lived, as I like to joke, 3 centuries, she born in 1890, died in 2004, so 3 centuries. Anyway, she was. That's where I learned first about the idea that apparently this proverb is about 1,000 years old, namely that wherever the sun doesn't get in, the priest or the doctor will. So I was basing myself entirely on tradition. I was like, well, if these things survived for so long and they've always been true, maybe the Wuhan flu also will have to abide by tradition. And surprise, surprise, it did. Of course, it's a respiratory infection. Of course it did.
Yes.
And then I had to work a lot to find peer-reviewed articles to explain to doctors, guys, do like I did. You'll have higher survival rate in your hospitals. Just take them outside. They'll be fine. But we can't do that because my protocol. What's your peer-reviewed evidence for that? I'm like, 1,000 years of tradition. I think that's good enough.
Yeah, I'm thinking, well, it's probably you wouldn't be able to get out the more severe cases, those that were like on ventilators and whatever.
Well, not those.
Kind of like, carry a whole ventilator outside. I mean, probably the mildest cases.
No, the thing is that eventually,
at the very worst, it can hurt. I mean, it's definitely.
Eventually, I convinced a few of them, and I was like, look, those that you're getting ready to put them under anesthesia and put them, get them intubated, don't get them outside. Try that for 2 days. What's the worst that can happen? You're already preparing to write their death certificates anyway. And surprise, surprise, all of them lived. Yeah, sure, it took a lot to recover, but they all lived instead of dying. And only then they say, oh, hold on a second, maybe that insane guy over there, the humanitarian volunteer, maybe he has a point. And the thing is that, and this is true in almost all professions, I guess with the exception of originalist judges in the United States, I think that's the only subset of a profession where tradition still matters.
Yes.
Whereas, in medicine it doesn't matter anymore at all. It definitely doesn't matter among those who call themselves science popularizers.
You know, I think in agriculture.
Yeah, in agriculture.
That's and it's a nice. You should look this guy up if you don't know about him. He's a basically a rocket scientist. He used to work for. I think it might. I'm not sure if he still does. He worked for U.S. military, testing a lot of like javelins and whatever. He has this like popular science YouTube channel. It's called Smarter Every Day. And he does a lot of like nice experiments, like takes his kids out and he has a very recent show about basically a group of guys who just prepare their land. You know, they just they have like these huge combines and they just and the amount of stuff those guys have to know, like meteorology, engineering. You know, if the combine would just break in the middle of the field, okay, they don't just call the service, look, I have a problem, my combine. No, they just take some tools and they fix it themselves. Okay, and then there are this like they're not called silos. Even he says this, that it's not the correct terminology, but let's call them silos because I can't remember how they're called right now. So we're basically just store grain temporarily for a period. And even those have like this complex systems of, you know, making sure that the grain is not getting wet, is not getting too hot. And so there's like a lot of things going on there. And I think it's, without me being, I don't want to go in that direction where it's like, you know, worshipping the life in the village. And I mean, I don't want to go crazy about this, but man, agriculture kind of, you know, educates you a lot. And I have this, let me see, where is it? This book right here, and which I recommend to anyone. I recommend it to you as well. You know about the guy, right?
Guide to Life on Earth. Chris Hadfield, yes.
Yeah. And he actually tells about his life on a farm in Alberta, if I'm not mistaken. And well, he was kind of a lucky guy. I mean, his father was a pilot. They had like this crop plane on their farm and whatever, but they were used to work on the farm. That's what actually educated him. Okay, working on a farm
gives you some humility for sure.
Yes, and teaches you, you know, how to kind of embrace work and like work and be used to working. So yeah.
Yeah, but there you go. During the comic off, you could get fined for trying to work your field.
Yes, yeah, that one I really didn't understand. I mean, that's beyond stupid. Why would you find someone who goes basically in the middle of nowhere to do whatever they they do on a field? I mean, this is really, really, really stupid, and it's probably just maybe some policeman who felt that no they have to be important, but I don't know. I mean, the amount of stupid things that happened during the stupid things that happened that were said. I mean, it's just blowing me away. At some point, I just stopped watching any show because I was like getting completely mad about, well, how can you say so many stupid things in the span of a like 1 hour broadcast? Okay, just shut up. I mean, it's like, there must be like a prize for something. I mean, we had this.
Maybe there is a prize.
Oh yes.
Because the thing is that up until about 36 hours ago, so let's say the evening of May the 12th, the Romanian language internet was full of people keeping on insisting on the same old wrong narrative about the comic cough. The narrative that I figured it out about 2 months ago, that come on, this is all nonsense, it's just a cough, get lost. And just 36 hours ago, bam, they all disappeared.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't actually watched it. I'm still.
And then I looked it up in other languages. I looked it up in French. I looked it up in Swedish. I looked it up in Norwegian, and almost roughly around the same period, between May 10th and May 13th, suddenly all the panic cars disappeared. All the propagandizers of panic disappear. Today, I wasn't driving, but I was in the cab getting towards this location. One of the mainstream radio stations was broadcasting jokes and about how we're going to go to the seaside and whatever. All the panic is just...
Right.
So that's the thing. Maybe there is a prize.
Or maybe they just...
All of them at once? No, if it happens once, it's an accident. If it happens twice, it's a coincidence. If it happens in 25 countries at the same time, it's not a coincidence.
I haven't followed, but it's possible.
I do, because that's my job. I follow propaganda and create propaganda.
Yes.
And the thing is that it's just too many of them at just almost the same time, with very little delay.
I mean, look. To me, I'm not so quick to dismiss this as just a cough yet. Mm-hmm. What I don't do, because one, to be fair, I have no idea what this is. Mm-hmm. Okay? All I'm doing is just looking around me and see what happens. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's one aspect. The other aspect is that I wouldn't trade liberty in any, and I think no one should. Mm-hmm. Even if this were like 50 times as bad.
Airborne Ebola.
Yes, even in that situation, curbing the liberties of people
is still wrong.
Still wrong. Even if you like forgo any philosophical arguments or moral arguments, it's wrong because it's not going to work. I mean, let's not forget that this whole thing originated under a totalitarian regime. So
the antidote of it must come from liberty.
Yes, this wouldn't have happened, and it didn't happen. Even if in the Europe we have a critical eye about it, and we have a lot of not so good things to tell about Europe. But still, it wouldn't have happened here. Why? Because we're still way freer than they're in China. So whenever someone tells you, yes, but maybe life is more. Yes, of course, life is important. But again, lack of liberty, if you go to the bottom of it, lack of liberty is what generated this whole thing and what has thrown the whole planet in pandemonium, basically. So that's what it is. It's not a pandemic, it's pandemonium. Okay. So obviously in my view, again, I'm not a specialist. Okay. I'm just looking at around me and I see there's people are dropping down on the street, dropping dead on the streets, and I'm pretty sure that isolation might have helped to a point, but it was not critical. And I'm sure that if the disease was as bad as they say, probably this whole isolation thing would have been marginal at best. Okay? So that said, there's this. We have to look into this. So why I'm saying that it's not helping to dismiss it as just a cough, in my view, is because we need to ask all the questions. And if you dismiss something, you run the risk of kind of dismissing some of the questions. So let's just ask all possible questions. Look at all angles. Look at why Italy had it so bad. Look at why Spain had it so bad. Maybe they had it so bad because they were like badly organized, too many elderly people, too many, what do you call them?
Crowded metropolis.
No, not only the. Okay, I'm having a bit of there was like houses where you just send old people when they don't have anyone.
Nurseries.
Nurseries, yeah, okay. So, but we definitely need to ask all the questions. And I was watching an interview of Peterson. We just talked about him.
The Uncommon Knowledge podcast.
Yes. And I was watching
Peter Robinson.
Peter Robinson, yeah. And I was watching a Too Many Sons, So this is getting confusing.
We need to get more Escos.
Yes. So, anyways, he just had an interview with I think an epidemiologist from Stanford, and the guy was kind of very open about everything. He said, "Look, this is the whole this blanket thing of just putting everyone in their house was a stupid idea, but this is still serious. So we should treat it seriously." And I have no I mean, I trust Peter Robinson completely and his guests. So he might be wrong, but I don't believe the guy was
if he's wrong,
talking in bad faith.
It's an honest mistake.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that said, we should definitely investigate all of this, and I think doctors should look into it, and all the scientists should just kind of look into it. At the very least, to say, yeah, it was, just to come to a conclusion. Yeah, it was a goddamn cough. Just let's move on, and that's it. Or if it's not, God forbid, then just find a solution for it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, but the thing is that it's not politically feasible. I mean, how will many of the democratically elected leaders come up and say, look, we're just all incredibly dumb and we just listened to or took orders from unelected officials?
Yes.
Because that is an issue. At the end of the day, I didn't vote for that idiot from Imperial College.
Yes.
Whom, again, we all knew he was an idiot because he's been saying, he's been making insane predictions, all of them wrong, for 20 years. It's not like this was the first time.
Yeah.
And no British citizen voted for that guy.
Yeah.
Yet almost all governments listened to him. See, here, we didn't vote for Raed Arafat to give us orders.
Yes.
So the thing is that the politicians have just forgone their
responsibilities. Yes. And it's for most politicians, or for dishonest politicians, it's worth it. Because
they're taking no chances.
One, they're taking no chances. Okay. And if things go wrong, they have someone to blame. Anything goes right, then they just retake their place in the spotlight. Say, look at us. It was a good thing that we listened to that guy, and look how.
Or even better, say it was my idea.
Oh, even better. Yeah. So that's the thing. I mean, it's however you. But they've definitely been foregoing their responsibilities, and they've been doing this for a while. And it's the same with again with what we were talking the last time with regulatory agencies. Okay, where instead of you as a senator or as or whatever a congressman or whatever, assembly member or whatever, instead of you proposing and passing a law, you just give that to the executive,
and some faceless bureaucrat from a regulatory agency that no one even knows it exists issues a regulation with the same enforcement as a law. And it's very difficult to get it repealed because in the US it's even more insane. You can only appeal it to the kangaroo court of that regulatory agency. In what world does that even make sense? But the thing is that, and we're getting back to the remark made by Thomas Sowell, I guess about 12 years ago, and said, when he was talking about the vulgar pride of intellectuals, also noting the issue that intellectuals rarely pay a price for being wrong. I mean, yeah, sure, that guy from Imperial College finally got fired, but after what, 5 or 6 panic-hearted nonsense predictions? And even then...
And getting fired is a small price to pay. I mean...
But he had to make 5 or 6 huge mistakes, and even then he wasn't fired for the mistake. He was fired for breaking some BS quarantine, quote-unquote order that nobody should have.
He should have been fired
like 15 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah, when he said that about 5 million people in Europe will die because of the mad cow disease, and nobody did. So but the thing is that rarely these people pay a price.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons why I sometimes get called an anti-intellectual, because I'm like, who is this guy? Who's paying him? Oh, so he's from that university. What did that university...
But the question is, are they really true intellectuals? Or are they just frauds? Because
they have the proper credentials.
Yes,
for sure,
that's the thing. They have the
not
credentials.
Necessarily.
Now, I'm not saying that some intellectuals may not and will not, get corrupt or opportunistic to just whatever, or maybe just end up in a bad corner and say, yeah, whatever. I'll just have to just play the way they sing, or otherwise I'm gonna get fired. So, but to me, because I think. I mean, someone was definitely right. There is pride to intellectuals, and the pride, I think, is one of the biggest sins, because it's kind of like it's affecting everything from like personal relationships to huge number populations. So anyway, but the thing is that it probably depends how you define intellectual, because if it simply believe that intellectual is someone who has some credentials from a university, then that's kind of broad for me. I wouldn't
Too broad.
I wouldn't put that guy, what's his name, into. I wouldn't classify
Niall
him as an
Ferguson.
intellect.
Yeah.
Yes, and the thing, it's a funny thing, because the first time when I heard, I thought they meant Niall Ferguson. You know, the Niall Ferguson, the history teacher and economist.
Yeah.
It was like, because the first time when I saw that, I was like, oh my god, if he says it, then this, and then I said, oh, it's not him. Because I thought it was Niall Ferguson. I was like, really? This can't be. It's like, no. So yeah, because I mean, even the title that I say, Niall Ferguson would never say something like that under any circumstances. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call him an intellectual. Intellectual, I think it actually asks of you to use your intellect. It's not just having it, okay, and proving it. You can use it in a very, very narrow situation, like you are a doctor and you can be like the most brilliant brain surgeon, not be an intellectual. Okay, you might understand the way every neuron works and be able to operate on anyone, and still be completely
politologist.
Yes, and completely clueless when you go to buy groceries. Okay, so again, this is the proof of a true Sowell. That's a true intellectual. Okay, Peter Robinson, he's a true intellectual. Okay, now Ferguson is a true intellectual. Because when you say you're an intellectual, it presupposes, in my view, that you have at least an inkling of knowledge from several fields, and if someone talks to you, if someone smart enough talks to you and explains to you some things, you're able to put two and two together and to draw a conclusion and to kind of position yourself in society and as in relation to different topics, not just because you know stuff. I wouldn't classify, like, even the most a brilliant mathematician or a brilliant it's not enough. Okay, you have to do more than knowing.
I've met a few brilliant mathematicians. They're some of the most socially inept persons I've ever met.
Yes. So it depends. I think being an intellectual is very much, it takes a certain kind of brain, and I think more than that, it takes a will to know, a will to and a lack of pride. And the will to be able to understand the world around you.
Not necessarily lack of pride, humility, I think is the word you're looking for.
Yeah.
Because some pride is
at the very
usually
least,
necessary.
Yeah, I mean, no. I mean,
it's low self-esteem.
No, when I say pride, I only mean
in the biblical sense.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong of you to be proud of your work. If you do something right, if you're a great physicist and if you discover whatever, or you, collide two particles and discover new energy source, great, be proud about it. Okay, but what I'm saying is yes, more in a biblical sense. When yes, I collided two particles in whatever, and I invented the best energy source in human history. Therefore, I know politics. No, and that's where you should recognize. Look, even though politics, in theory, are simpler. I mean, I would rather. Technically, if you were to take the brain by sheer brain power, okay, and probably a very good brain of a physicist who understands quantum physics, if they have enough of a goodwill, they'd probably understand political principles. It's not. It's not rocket science. It's just common sense. But that's the thing. That's probably one of the important things. The common sense and intelligence are not living in the same house. It's not enough. You can be intelligent and be completely nonsensical.
Completely lack common sense.
Yes.
The thing is that is it the way the institutions have, well, some would say evolved, I would rather say involved.
Yes.
Is it the institutions that are the problem? And the reason I'm asking you this is because I'm still trying to make sense. Last week when I asked you this in Romanian, I had no idea. 1 week later, I have some idea, but I'm still trying to make sense. How was it and how is it, although it's increasingly less so, but it still is possible, with so many individuals who should know better? Those who call themselves libertarians or conservatives even, or even, priests, patriarchs, people who should know better, whose job is to know better. how was it possible for them to allow themselves to be fooled in that way in order to accept basically sanitary fascism? How was it possible? Why did that happen?
It's
a complicated question. I know.
It's a complicated question because I think.
But I didn't call you to this show to discuss simple things.
Well, I don't think I'm definitely not going to give you all the answers, because I don't know all the answers.
Nobody has all the answers.
I mean, one thing is for sure because we believe in the individual. So there are individual, there are common things at play, but there are individual things at play as well. There's definitely a lot of variables to consider. Okay, and because for instance, let's take Daniel, our patriarch, whom I kind of like actually.
He's a great manager.
Yes, at the very least. For
our American friends, we're talking about the patriarch of the Romanian Orthodox Church.
Yes, yes. So at the very least, he's a very good administrator. And I mean, if he ran this country, oh man,
probably would be better run than now. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, on the other hand, so I'm aware of at least two things. One, I think. So before I say what I think, I'm gonna say what I'm aware of. One, whether he wants it or not, whether we want it or not, he's a product of the old system. So whatever you do, even if you're a priest, however good you are, there is no way you're not carrying some of the bad stuff from you from that
legacies,
time.
Yes.
Some legacies. There is no way you have some like we say in Romania, some tin cans hanging from your tail. Okay, so that's a given, and I can accept that. Okay, I mean, if I can accept it for the politicians in Romania, why wouldn't I accept it for him?
Of course.
The second thing I'm aware of is that he has to play a very, very, very careful power game. I'm aware that he has a lot of power. At the same time, I'm aware that he's probably not all by himself. He can do whatever he pleases whenever he pleases. So again, I wouldn't know better what to do in his place. And I do know that from talking to several people that he's interested about discussing a lot of things, including like the separation from the church and state and whatever. So he definitely is open to discussing things. So, but again, this is him. If I go to, maybe there are some liberal priests, okay, but they are deeply enmeshed in a system that's kind of corrupt, okay, and if they're not careful, they might lose their parish. They might be sent to whatever parish in the middle of nowhere. When they also have they have their families. They have maybe their own issues at home, maybe health issues or personal issues or whatever. So, personally, I'm not kind of going to, just go ask them, look, sacrifice everything you have just because. If you want to do it, great. I'm going to, promote your case. So coming back to knowing better, I think people most of the time know better. I was just having actually a kind of a short, Facebook debate, if you can call it that, with someone, with a lawyer thing. And we're talking about free will and whatever. And the idea is like most of us know better, but we don't act based on that knowing better.
Why?
Because it's human nature, because they're not perfect, because we're weak, we're scared, we're procrastinating, I think most, if people all around the world would just kind of mind their own business, we would be in a far better place. But I think I don't think this is ignorance. Or if it is ignorance, then there is no excuse for it, because as we were talking last time, there is plenty of information lying around. There is information, there is
wisdom that is lacking.
Yes.
The knowledge
anyone
is free
at this time, almost anyone has the possibility to just go out there, compare information, look around them, try to, again, gather some information from their surroundings, from their environments, put two and two together, and see what comes out. But people don't do it. So I think it's a matter of, it's mostly a matter of,
well, it is interest too.
it's laziness. It's interest as well. It's opportunism as well. It's laziness. It's because laziness. This is, you know, laziness in. There is this great priest. I think he's his 40s. Father Mike Schmitz. He's from. I think he's from Minnesota, and he has like this very, very great short videos on his YouTube channel. And he actually has a piece talking about procrastination. And he says, look, procrastination is not laziness. Procrastination is doing something when you should be doing something else. Okay? Procrastination is just postponing things that you should be doing now. Okay? And that affects us all the time. Okay? And a lot of times with very, 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 very bad results. Okay, with this procrastination, you know, it's even you know, if you look at, you know, the whole crisis right now. If this was like a very grave situation, like a very deadly disease, okay, that was politician procrastination, not having the sanitary system prepared to handle something like that. Now it's true that. And that almost must be probably acknowledged that not you can prepare all systems to function for some. There's always going to be a crisis that's going to crush a system.
Oh, of course.
So you can prepare for anything and everything.
You can't have a country full of hospitals just in case.
Just in case, you know, once in 100 years, like a
maybe even rarer.
Yeah. So even rarer than that. So that said. If politicians wouldn't have procrastinated, well, at least in our situations, outright means they just kept on stealing and not caring about the country. Okay, this was not, but it was also kind of a mixed procrastination, because they probably said, "Yeah, I'm going to do whatever I want to do for me and my, you know, my body,
inner circle,
my inner circle, and whatever." Because what's the worst that's going to happen? Maybe an earthquake. What are you going to do then? And they're going to say, yeah, well, we don't have enough resources. Why don't you have enough resources? What have you been doing all these years? Okay? So there's also this thing with humans, you know, humans who should responsibly kind of know that risk is inherent to life. They kind of don't like to think about risk. Okay? And this guy again talks about. He has a very nice chapter. It's called "The Power of Negative Thinking," and he says, "Look, when I was going to space, the first thing I was doing was thinking about all the negative things that could happen. Okay, imagine all the risks." And he said, "Look, I would stay with my wife at a table with a cup of coffee." We'll make sure all the paperwork is put in order in case I die. All the insurance things are prepared and whatever. So my family doesn't, you know, end up without insurance or whatever. And he said, and once having taken care of the bad stuff, okay, my mind was clear and I could concentrate on my job, going to space, doing research and whatever. We don't do that. We are afraid of thinking of bad things, and because we don't think of them, okay, then they just take us by surprise.
Right. Yeah, I guess I'm asking this due to extreme personal bias, because, you know, the commie cough panic hasn't affected me personally at all, and that's probably because I did think about these things many years ago.
Probably.
Because, you know, when everyone panicked, I was like, hold on a second, I have a forest, I have a house in the middle of nowhere that can self-sustain for at least 2 years. I have enough resources saved up to maintain my current lifestyle for at least 8 months, if not more. How long is this gonna last? 3 months? Okay.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, well, but
and it's probably my bias. I'm thinking that everyone who considers themselves libertarian, conservative, whatever, should have thought about that too, and now we're discovering that they didn't.
No. And I think this is one of the issues that I even, you know, recognize in myself, that a lot of people whom call themselves conservative or liberals or libertarians have a hard time
practicing what
they
preach. Uh-huh.
And we're all painfully aware of that, and it's good that we are aware of that, and it's and I think that the moment you are not aware of it, and you that's when you kind of start to actually lose the libertarian or liberal or conservative spirit. Because this is the thing, you should be aware, we should be aware at all times that we're imperfect, that we are prone to mistakes, and we should be vigilant. In the first place, first and foremost, vigilant as in relation to our own selves. Okay? And then, because if we're not able to just, and I've kind of been obsessing about this for the last years, but I've been seeing it quite a lot, again, even with me. Okay, so I'm not, separating myself from this group. Look, thing is, if you can't keep your own house in order, how are you going to just run a country? No. I mean, yes, you may talk to people and tell them all the ideas that you have. That might be good ideas, and it's good that you at least do that. But I think that, and this is why America still works, okay? Because there are people who have, and people that are, blue-collar people who have their house in order, with whatever, defects they might have or whatever, like everyone else around. They have their house in order, and they kind of, they're
so
reliable.
You're saying clean up your room first? Before?
Yes. Some people might be fed up with that, but it's true. But it's true, because it's hard. It's hard to not just go. And even if you just go out and preach, and we all believe in the things we say, but when you go back home and you kind of look, at your little room not being clean or house, whatever, you kind of say, I mean, it's hard, and it should be hard to live with this like discrepancy where you say something and you know better. You know how things should be for you and for everyone else. Okay, I mean, at least you kind of imagine a way that you should behave yourself. Okay? And when you go back to it, you see that it's all theory. It's all on paper, like the Soviet Constitution. So again, when I say it's the same, it's kind of something replicating at a macro and micro level. Okay, where again, if the principles you talk about don't reflect in your life, well, maybe not all of them, but a good portion of them will have to reflect in your life. Okay. At some point, people won't believe you, because I think you will not be able to project enough, security around you. Okay, you cannot. I mean, you look at people who have their house in order, more or less. Okay, and you look at them talking, and
they
you see
inspire more faith,
yes,
more
trust.
Faith,
and and there is a kind of serenity and coolness to them. Okay, that kind of you kind of breathe that in. It's not talk, so that kind of helps bring up your message.
And it works the other way around too, because when I know I have my house in order and I explain, look, you should be doing this because I've done it and it works like this and it would make sense. It also brings a lot of, I guess it's a not giving a shit attitude, in the sense that, oh, someone doesn't believe me, who cares?
Yeah.
His laws, not mine.
Yeah. I mean, this is another thing. I mean, look, I'm not going to shove my ideas down your throat. Okay, we're gonna sit down, have a beer. We might even argue, because I know people whom are like at the complete opposite spectrum of where I am. I still get along great with them. So I still think that, they're cool. And at some point they might be just saying no now, but maybe I'm seeing something now, and they maybe they're just putting it aside, and they'll come back to it later. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to shove my truth down anybody's throat. Okay, just for the regular Joe on the street, just don't come over trampling my rights. Okay, and I'll be okay with you. Okay, so I'm a Christian. I'm not going to just go, force people to be Christian. Whatever, be whatever you want to be. I mean, this goes even, just to make a small, detour here. This kind of defeats the purpose of being Christian, because if you're Christian by force, then it's pointless. You have to be Christian by will and by your own single will. So again, this is, I totally agree with you. I mean, this is, and I have experimented this. Look, I'm not going to get angry if someone doesn't listen to me. I'm going to get angry if they start making fun of things they do not understand, or things that I think they do not understand. Okay, and if I'm trying to, and the moment where I'm getting pissed is when I'm trying to have a polite, civilized discussion and just expose my points of view, and I'm getting bombarded with all kind of offhand remarks from the other side. And at some point it's like, just go to hell, whatever. I think I'm gonna have one of those.
Kinda like the Penele shills have been doing lately.
Yeah, well, with the National Party in Romania,
the National Liberal, we call them the Never Liberal.
Liberal.
The guys who installed the sanitary dictatorship. Yes.
Yeah. Well, with them, it's like that thing with the Russians sending spies in to help. I mean, the level of shilling they do is so low,
so transparent.
So transparent, it's not even worth engaging. I mean, I'm not. I even find it hard to believe that there are people who actually fall for that, because it's like kindergarten level shilling. So I don't get it. It's like I think I did have a few spats with a lady on Facebook or whatever, but at some point it's like, is that all you can throw at me? Because I've met other shills, okay, and
you're talking to one least, now.
yes, but at least they're interesting to talk to, even though they're. I mean, you can still see through them, because you kind of. I mean, after a while. You kind of see the patterns. Yes. You kind of see. I mean, you can see. You can read an argument or listen to someone, and you can instantly tell if they're stupid or playing stupid or trying to play you or
trying to subvert your audience
or whatever. So you kind of know. Okay. But at the very least, there are some whom are, at least it's engaging. It's like a sparring thing, which is just part. You kind of. You train yourself to sharpen your arguments and sharpen your whole way of discussing and debating. But with these guys, like, it's not even, I'm not even having fun. It's like I blocked one of them on Facebook, not because she pissed me off, but because, look, this is boring. This is like, what are you? 12? It's like, this is
not even the shills are like they used to be.
Yeah.
The quality of the shilling is the curve is being flattened when it comes to the quality
and
of
again,
shilling.
What does this tell about us? I mean, if they're, and this is a big if, but probably if they are effective, what is the level we as a nation or as a community of nations have sunk to? Okay, that some the Russians just sent some guys over in guise of help, and they prove out to be spies, like everyone was.
And they were all disinfecting just right next to embassies, NATO headquarters.
Yes.
And
I mean, it's so. It's like it's
just like a McCarthy era movie.
Not even that. It's like one of those Austin Powers movies. It's like a stupid comedy. It's like this. Really? How can you fall for this? I think I have
two explanations for this. One of them is, I might be falling ill to the principle of scientism, which is a sin in itself. Namely that there are actually some studies saying that our collective IQ it has been heavily dropping for more than 40 years. So,
it's
as a general mean, we might actually be stupider than we were 40 or 50 years ago. I'm not so sure about that, but it could be true.
Could be. I mean, I'm
It
not a
could be
specialist
true.
by any stretch of the
It
imagination.
could be true.
Yeah.
Having lived enough on this planet, I'm thinking, yeah, people were a little bit smarter 30 years ago or 25
Even maybe
years.
because maybe we've been having it at least in some quarters, because not the whole world is having it easy. But if you are having an easy life too much time, if you are not confronted with issues,
Yeah, it's
you're obviously going to lose those skills. I mean, you know, if you start exercising, you're going to start getting fat and your muscles are going to atrophy and whatever. So I think the same thing is with the brain and the society and whatever.
yeah, the brain is at the end of the day a muscle,
Yeah,
and if you
if you
fail
stop-
to train it,
if you stop being vigilant for decades, it's hard to regain that. So I think it's just a matter of problem of us exercising our. I don't think we got stupider. We got just atrophied. I think this is maybe the
right.
the,
And the
the
second
better term.
explanation I'm having in mind is one of a bit more of a technicality, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of criticism for it, but I don't care. Unlike the United States and maybe Brazil to a certain extent, and there are very few countries, but Europe definitely doesn't have this. Namely, the at least the notion of private intelligence. That is to say, the intelligence and the national security of a country is done 100% by the state, and you get punished if you do it in a private sector. And that's very specific to Europe.
Right.
And it's very uncharacteristic to the United States. I mean, even to the extent that you can access some of these issues, because most of them are public. It's not a matter of national security secret. The CIA contracts a lot of private companies to do things for them, and even there are entire intelligence agencies that are entirely private, and they only work with the state sometimes, depending on the contract or on the issue.
Right.
The notion of a private contractor in intelligence in Europe is very rare, almost non-existent, and as a result you get a very ossified state apparatus that works just like the DMV, basically. We know better because we are intelligence officers. And then they end up being fooled by,
I wouldn't know. This is actually this is something I never looked into because it didn't interest me all that much. But I mean, if you come to think of it, private enterprise is always better than state enterprise, and that's not to say that they're not, qualified people in intelligence services.
Of course they are. But the leadership usually isn't. The leadership is mostly bureaucrats who get promoted by seniority or by fiat, by legislative fiat, by other politicians.
And again, I mean, for the last 30 years or so, we haven't been confronted with
a serious intelligence threat.
Yes. Or actually, we have been confronted, but it has been way more discreet, way more subtle than it used to be. I mean, it wasn't because you had like what 2 world wars, and then you had the threat of nuclear annihilation or whatever, and people were on their toes. But when you come to propaganda and to China and to, I mean, and obviously there were people, and there are people who were always painfully aware of what the Russians were doing, what the Chinese were doing, what the Iranians were doing, or whatever. But again, I think it's a lack of serious visible threat. Okay, because if things seem okay, and I think that for
the natural assumption is to assume that they are okay.
I think one, this is a natural assumption, and 2, I think there's a bias for people to just shun the idea of risks still being present. Because if they acknowledge that there's a risk present, then they have to allocate resources in their lives or in their societies or countries
towards mitigating
that. And they say, I'll be better. How about I just watch some Netflix instead of just reading an article or watching a debate? Okay? So, whereas, in the Cold War, everyone was interested in that.
Yeah, it was more of a mass phenomenon, the idea that the KGB exists, the idea that the KGB infiltrates people, subverts organizations. It wasn't entirely mainstream, but it was more of a mass phenomenon.
Yeah, and there was that very visible threat of nuclear annihilation. I mean, that was, everybody was kind of imagining this going up in flames and whatever, like a Terminator movie. Yeah, but now, I mean, there's talk, China's kind of, because they realized, and hopefully they would never be able to win the culture war because, well, the language in the first place. But it's harder to, acknowledge China's push for spreading their culture and infiltrating other countries. Okay, than say China, because if China would be just marshaling their fleet and starting attacking,
random cities
or whatever, then people kind of probably, we kind of have to do something about that, at some point. Probably take them about 2 years to do that, but at some point they'll kind of mobilize, but this way it's like, the Chinese kind of opened a cultural center in our city. Whatever. Look, they have nice music and... I know. I heard some people talking about. Again, this is something I just heard about, so I'm not sure about. Maybe he's saying some stupid shit here, but about China having tried to heavily infiltrate Canada, for instance, when they kind of financed a lot of
real estate
and universities, a lot of universities and whatever. So.
No, that's true. I've seen it myself.
Yeah,
personally, yes.
Yeah, so
they own entire cities in Canada.
Yeah.
So the party owns, not regular.
Yeah.
No, the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's a very more subtle threat that you can more easily just overlook, either because you don't want to think about it, or just not giving it too much attention. So I think that coming back to something we were talking last time about things going bad at some point, I think that we kind of need, and it's bad to say that, we probably need like a more visible threat for us to kind of start to mobilize and start to think about not to forget that these threats are real, that liberties are not guaranteed,
and that civilization is the exception rather than the rule.
Yes, and that
barbarism.
Yes, and that civilization has to be maintained. Okay, it's something you can constantly have to just oil and tinker and you have to discern what you should keep, what you should just throw away. So it's permanent work. It's working all the time. It's like working on a house. Okay, if you I mean, I'm just going with a crazy analogy. If there's like the neighbor comes with like a bulldozer and he just wants to bulldoze my house, I'm going to do something. Okay, but if I kind of see like the walls going kind of yellowish or yellowish tint, kind of see that going with me. I maybe not even notice it, or if I do, it's like, whatever, I gotta just paint the walls next year. How about I do it next year? I'm just gonna have a vacation this year. I work too much. So I think this is it's probably the difference between a very grave, visible threat versus a very subtle threat that just kind of works underneath and kind of erodes the foundation all the time. And when you realize that the foundation is eroded,
could be too late.
Or at least could be too late, and you say, "Oh my God, we need a new constitution. How about that?" Or maybe we should kind of stop patching and kind of tear the whole thing down and build something new. So there's that.
Right. Well, I guess in that note we can.
We came
back exactly
to where we started.
And of course, our commie friends will say that we did a horseshoe theory. But then the commie friends can get the commie cough and leave us alone.
Yes. But they can just always come on your channel and help you with the traffic and whatever, because that's always helpful.
That's always helpful. Yes.
And maybe they'll just learn something in the process, right?
Well, it happened with a few people.
I know.
Even on the Romanian language channel, someone came in and said, "Look, I'm from Russia." And his grandfather or grandmother was from Moldova, and therefore he understands Romanian. now I'm starting to thinking about what is wrong with my country.
Yeah.
Sometimes that happens too.
Yeah,
And he grew up as a Marxist, and I was like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe something's wrong.
So that's a person like that's the mark of common sense, actually. Basically good faith.
Before we end, maybe we should discuss this too.
Yes.
What happened with many conservatives and almost all libertarians that we both know? What happened with that exercise of humility that used to be very common 8 or 10 years ago? Namely, what if I'm wrong? Throughout the time I said, no, look, the lockdown is a mistake, this is wrong, and I'm willing to be proven wrong, but I think I'm right. And I kept on asking myself, what if I'm wrong?
Yeah.
What if I'm wrong? And kept on looking, kept on following. This time I wasn't.
I think you should always always just
and
keep
eventually
that
I was like,
in the back
okay,
of your
this
head,
time I wasn't wrong. But I've been wrong in the past. But the thing is that those on the other side of the debate, namely that this is airborne Ebola and we should all be staying inside and quarantined for the next 2 years, none of them seemed to have had the instinct of saying, wait a minute, what if I'm wrong? Wait a minute, what are the consequences of what I'm suggesting? Wait a minute, where did that instinct go?
Do you think this instinct was? Let's talk about Romania, because I'm not sure about the rest of the world. Do you think that instinct was here 10 or 8 years ago?
It was a lot more common, for sure.
Well, I think one of the reasons, and again,
for instance, let me give you an example. In 2015, I think it was that big fire at the nightclub.
Yes.
I think it was in 15, right?
Yeah.
The same guy who's running the emergency situation now was running it then, and he did a terrible job. Yes. But he remained in position because he's loved by almost all of the political class as a great expert. I have no idea on what foundation, but whatever. The thing is that in 2015, there was, of course, another event of mass emotion, if you want, right?
Yes.
A lot of the members of the public, of all political persuasions, said, oh, come on, this is wrong, we have to do something. And eventually it ended up changing the prime minister. Fine, that's okay.
Yeah.
The thing is that at that time, libertarians and conservatives were more willing to say, wait a minute, what if we're wrong? What if, okay, that guy is incompetent, but what if nobody can build huge hospitals for burned people to house 65 or 100 victims at the same time? Did anyone else in the world do that? Oh, wait, nobody did, because you can't have a city full of hospitals for burned people, because it's rare to have you can't build a system for a crisis. The thing is that in 2015, a lot of them were willing to ask those questions. This time, however, almost nobody. It was, insane people like me and a few others, but for the most part, nobody asked.
Well,
what happened?
So I think there are two things to be said here. So one, I think that we might be, I'm not sure, but we might be looking at a very thin sliver of the population. Because if we're looking at our interactions on Facebook, we're only interacting with maybe a couple hundred people. So I'm not sure if
I'm interacting with several thousand.
Okay, but even so, how relevant is that as opposed to the entire population of Romania? So that would be one thing. It's just that's something maybe
it can be calculated.
Maybe this is all. This is the whole of us. Okay, maybe there's not more. Maybe there's marginally more people. So this is like a very thin sliver of society where there's this kind of debates happen. So it might be entirely possible. But the other thing is, I think that Facebook exacerbated the conflicts and
for sure.
a lot. So one of the things back in 2014, I worked as a volunteer for then candidate Monica Macovei. And I was working with a lot of people whom I considered friends, and some of them I still consider friends. And but I didn't realize that, because at that point the Socialist Party was the main enemy. And up to that point, we haven't realized.
Just because you hate the Socialist Party, that doesn't make you a conservative or a right-winger.
And we haven't realized how deep some faults were between us, because there was like really some San Andreas size faults, ideological faults between us. And they, in that point, they started in 2014. They started to become apparent in this community. Okay, because up until that point, we were all friends. At least I was kind of friends with. I wasn't even thinking that we were that adamant about some, and I think they were more. I mean, I was kind of firm in my position, but I never, or rarely try to just blast someone or berate them for their ideological positions. I mean, if they're not being, if they're not being, obnoxious about it, I'm always trying to have a civil conversation. But at that point, it really became apparent that from 2014 till today, I have lost friends. Okay, we have been, and I kind of make it a principle not to let friendships be threatened by political positions, because at the end of the day, I think you can still be my friend. I can still appreciate and love you and be there for you, even if one day before we kind of argued about hotly about some political thing, we can still be friends. But that said, so that's about 6 years ago. I think that the society and what you would call basically a civil society in Romania, and not only in Romania, I think, but probably in the States and everywhere else, that started earlier. But for us, it became apparent only then. So now I think that people are becoming very adamant about their point of view, and less inclined to agree, less inclined to just sit down and talk. So this is one of the, I told you before, this is one of the things I would like to see, people just getting back to the table and trying to talk, provided they do it in all the parties involved do it in good faith. Okay, but now I think
the assumption of good faith is fading away. So
yes,
how do you test for it?
I don't know.
There is a test for comic off, but there is no test.
There is a test, because if someone would just lend you their ear and not try to paint you as a monster or whatever for your points of view, then they can probably safely assume that they are. They are kind of making an effort in good faith. But I think this might actually be the main reason, because right now people are more adamant and more clinging to their point of view. Some of them they're doing it because they know, because they have a good demonstration that their system works, or that their ideas are proven. Some do it because in spite, or because of their friends, or because they may even agree with you. But maybe they're in a community, or they have friends or colleagues or whatever that are opposed of them, and they're afraid of being shunned away or being.
Yeah, they deem that more important than.
Yes, but I think this is, if not the main reason, one of the main reasons, and I think Facebook it's squarely to blame there. It's not Facebook as an enterprise necessarily, because I heard someone
social media as a
yes, because I heard someone complaining about social media feeding people only crap topics and scandalous topics and whatever. Yes, because that's what people are looking for. So I mean, in that regard, I wouldn't.
They're fulfilling a need.
Yes. Okay. People want to bicker and fight. Then. Okay, I'm gonna just feed you bicker and fighting, and I'm gonna use advertising to get my money's worth of that, and that's it.
These were around long before Facebook existed.
Yes.
I mean, in internet terms, I'm a lot older than the internet itself. That is to say, I was one of the first people in this country to actually join the internet, and at the time there were IRC servers who were fulfilling this function. Then there were forums specifically,
but they weren't that widespread. I mean, not everyone was on forums back in the day.
Sure.
Now everyone is on Facebook, so I think the phenomenon is way more widespread.
It's more widespread, but the thing is that the need for scandal and the need for
that has been with people since forever.
Yeah.
Okay, but I think that there are certain communication environments that actually encourage that, that actually foster a climate where you just, because again, it's way easier to berate someone on Facebook than it is when it's he sits next to you at a table and you're over a beer, even if you just know them, even if they piss you off, you might still be more willing to kind of give them the benefit of the doubt, or try to talk to them a bit, or try to just get to them, as opposed to Facebook, when you're just the reflex, you just type a rant and whatever. Okay, so it's just frustration plays a role in this. So I think that's one of the reasons that I would like to see debates. People debating in bars and meeting and actually having these discussions. The discussions they have on Facebook, just how about you guys move that and just have a talk somewhere?
Yeah, but that's forbidden because you're getting the commie cough.
Yeah,
because the thing is that I'm half serious about this, because during the period of the so-called quarantine that at least the internet active population actually observed.
Yes.
I'm thinking about 25 to 30% of the population of this country actually abide by the so-called military ordinances.
Yeah.
Everyone else just ignored them like we do.
Yes. Yeah.
But the thing is that those people contributed to a much higher degree of what you're saying, for accumulated frustrations and whatnot,
Yes.
because they were all in the same place for weeks on end.
Yeah. I mean, it's gotten to me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, and
you didn't really observe
and
the
I didn't
quarantine.
really observe it. Okay, so I just kind of walked around and whatever. So, I'm even not going, out that much, to bars and whatever. But even me is like, okay, what is this? Why am I, I mean, again, I know introverted people who are like, hey, at least before I had the option to stay indoors and not see people, but now that it's forbidden, I kind of want to see people.
I want to see people. Yeah. It's exactly how I did with the Easter mass at the church. I'm an atheist. I don't go to church, but the state said it's haram to go to church on the Easter night. I'm like, I'm definitely going because if the state, just because, just because.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool.
I think we can end it. Andrei, thanks a lot for coming.
No, thank you
again for this show.
Yeah.
Look up constitutionproject.ro, I think it is.
.ro,
Yeah, and we're gonna.
And then I promise that
put up English language content.
Time permitting, I'll also start to put that in English, because I think it doesn't hurt to bring more people into this conversation.
Not only it doesn't hurt, but since we've already established that
helps.
it is an
General
issue.
issue,
It's an issue that affects multiple countries within Europe. English being the lingua franca, essentially, because not all people speak a lot of European languages like I do.
So, and especially, and also, we need more, people in the United States that still are fond of their constitution to join this conversation. Conversations which I know they're having on a constant basis in the United States, but I think it should actually help you to do this on an international level, Yeah.
Right.
Well,
with all
thank
that
you for
being
having
said, me. Send me to Sweden. So I
Send him to Sweden.
Yeah. And I'll see you around.
See you around. Cheers.